Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I am here with erstwhile New York journalist Syd Schwartz, who can be found at his Jazz and Coffee Substack or at his Instagram Jazz and Coffee page. And I'm always just so jealous of the amount of information you put in an Instagram post. I'm still like tapping on my phone, but you do a great job there. And you've done a handful of really great liner notes recently, including the upcoming Bill Evans exploration record on Craft, part of the Small Batch series coming out this week, the week of 12/9. You also did Over Your Shoulder there, Donald Byrd's Kofi, a Tone Poet release, Wayne Shorter's Odyssey of Iska, another Tone Poet release. I just asked him about, he did 3 Yes albums, the liner notes, Fragile, the Yes album, and Relayer. So we are here to discuss some of Syd's favorite jazz records from 2024. Does that sound right? Your favorite?
That sounds great, Ken. Thank you. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, well, good. Well, have at it, man. I'm really curious. We haven't talked about this at all. I don't know what you're going to choose. So you go.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, first of all, I just, compliments on another, great year on YouTube for your channel. I appreciate the kind words on the Instagram, the Substack. You've been a great supporter. And, as you talk about, you're tapping away on your phone. I'm kind of jealous at your confidence in front of the camera there on YouTube. I have
no confidence at all. I appreciate that. Yeah.
But so it's been about a year since you and I, the last time I think we talked on here was a similar topic. What's the recap, if I recall correctly? I think we were kind of recapping 2023.
Wow, I don't remember, but perhaps.
Yeah, regardless, when doing these types of year-end recaps, there's always this sort of no man's land that occurs in the kind of post-Thanksgiving, pre-New Year's area where a couple of records inevitably they're coming in from overseas or they're late releases or whatever, and they kind of fall through the cracks. So I wanted to start my favorites of 2024 with a late arrival from the end of 2023 that ended up kind of not making the cut in my discussions last year, and it's one of these independent label, limited editions that, as you wonder sometimes, it's such a great record that, how is it still available since it is a limited edition? And I'm not sure if you know or covered this one yet, but this is on Sam Records, and this is the Heath Brothers, Paris 1976. And this features Jimmy Heath on sax and flute, Stanley Cowell on piano, Percy Heath on bass and cello, and Albert Tootie Heath on drums. So it is a strong, lots of Heath here on this particular record. And yeah, exactly. And it's 2 good jams on one side and a really long take on Smilin' Billy, 22 minutes on side B. And if you were at all a fan of the kind of Strata East sound or some of those Muse records in kind of the mid-70s, this will knock you out.
Really? I wouldn't think that would all be what's on there just looking at it.
Yeah, I know. I thought it was going to kind of be a little more straight ahead, but they really stretch. It is a beautiful recording. Really outstanding. I mean, Sam Records has a long track record of doing excellent pressings, high quality vinyl. This one also comes with, if I can get it out of the dang, tip-on jacket, really nice. And they, when they can, they also include, a lovely additional photograph to kind of give you an idea, good flavor of the, of the era.
Nice.
Really, really nice job.
I know Albert, he put up that Kawada album, which definitely qualifies in the Strata world sort of way back then.
Yeah.
I always thought that Jimmy was straight ahead, but they stretch on this.
They really do. And it's a tremendous record. You can, Sam Records website, I believe Dusty Groove, I'm sure probably carries it. A few other folks, who specialize in that kind of thing. But I have played this record a lot. I still pulling it off the shelf regularly to play. And, you look back a year and go, wow, what are the records I picked up that I was enthusiastic about then, but boy, I haven't touched them in, 6, 5, 4 months, whatever. This one is still getting a lot of regular play. Really, really recommended record. So this one, I'm a big fan of the International Anthem record, and I really like this Cassie Kinoshi Siege record. I don't know if you had a chance to play this one.
I have. I did a video on the label and thought that was great.
So, this record, which, there's a story behind this that, Cassie writes about, this is for her mother. It's a record about gratitude, and, time well spent, with her mom. It's I had an experience with this record where I was, having some difficulty sleeping and focusing and concentrating. And I did an early morning listen, initially on high res, on high res digital, with a solid DAC and good headphones, and it's one of those things where you felt your shoulders drop 6 inches in the first couple of minutes. Like it really was like a
cool.
Okay, I can really lose myself in this, and I have found myself frequently losing myself in this record. And I think that's a really, powerful endorsement for music that has the capability to really transport you and take you away.
That record, I didn't get it right away. I had to sit down and really listen to it. But it's a great record, and I looked her up. She's won a bunch of awards in the UK, one of the shining lights of that incredibly bright and shiny scene. Good choice.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it is an interesting scene, and I'm also that there, women continue to be very underrepresented, and so I'm glad to see that there are great records out there that people are talking about, because people are talking about this record. So I am glad to see that there are conversations afoot, and happy to have this on the list this year of favorites. This record. Man, this record used to cost an arm and a leg if you could even find a copy. But reissued this year on the Barely Breaking Even label. So this is...
That's the name of the label?
That is the name of the label, is Barely Breaking Even. Great name for a record.
Wow. So this is a duo or a folk band?
This is Reminiscent Suite by Mal Waldron and Terumiso Hino, who is a Japanese trumpet player, and that band is fleshed out by four more stalwarts of the Japanese jazz scene, and I'm gonna butcher their names, so I'm probably just not gonna go ahead and do that and embarrass myself, which would ruin my J-Jazz credibility, because I'm a big fan of Japanese jazz, and I do get people commenting going, "Oh, Japanese jazz is not its own genre." And I'm not necessarily suggesting that it is a genre or subgenre, but it does have an identifiable sound, and it's broad and widespread, and there are many variations on that theme, but this particular record, and I'm just going to open it because the liner notes by Tony Higgins, who's one of the he and Mike Peden are the guys behind getting this label going. They are dedicated subject matter experts and collectors of Japanese jazz. And they published a book earlier this year on the history of Japanese jazz, a huge coffee table book. I should have brought it so I could show you, and I'll send you a JPEG of it so you can add it to the conversation. But this record, they're very selective about what they choose to license and reissue, because that's a real chore to get all the paperwork and get all the rights and the sign-offs and dig through the tapes and all of that. This record is from 1972. Each side is one long, sprawling, intense exploration, and somewhere in between Coltrane, Strata East, and I don't even know what else. I mean, nothing is played at 100 miles an hour. It's more that the intensity is so deep that you kind of find yourself doing one of those, like you're white knuckling it in your chair as you listen. It's incredibly powerful stuff, and I think some of Waldron's finest work outside of his really classic stuff.
Wow.
Really expansive, really exploratory, sounds beautiful, beautifully recorded, and it's it's trumpet, sax, bass drum, percussion, piano. Nothing weird or out of the ordinary. So really,
I didn't know that one at all. That's a really, really good choice. So what's next in this? So far, great titles.
So I want to pull one out here, and this is going to be it's a familiar title, but it's a new presentation, and I really think it has significantly changed the listening experience, and that is the expanded. Boy, I'm getting a lot of reflection here, so we're gonna.
That's good. Looks good.
Twist it this way, but Sonny Rollins, Night at the Vanguard. I'm always of mixed feelings when there's conversations. It's like we found the rest of the show, or we found the rest of the nights, because I think sometimes a situation like that produces a lot of gold. There's a CD example. If you were a Zappa fan and you were a fan of Roxy and Elsewhere, when the Zappa estate put out the Roxy performances, which is every note, from every set, that they were doing, great.
What label is that?
So this is through Universal. And I have to say, and I know we're not supposed to talk about CDs, so I apologize even for pulling this off the shelf. But I do want to point out something, and for any labels that are watching this, that I hope you're paying attention. Please note, as I pull the top off of this thing, the lack of frippery and nonsense within. Here are the sleeves. Here's the booklet. It is nice and tight. There's no, I don't need coasters, marbles, scarves, anything of the sort. Keep it tight. Great booklet. There's a lot of information in the booklet, and that's what I want, is context. But I don't need a lot of tchotchkes.
So what's the exact title of that release?
This is called the Roxy Performances, and the original Roxy and Elsewhere, if you owned the double LP, it was a double LP. And this is, what do we got here? 7 CDs.
Wow.
And it's everything. It's all of the sets at the Roxy. This was a successful expansion of a classic live record. Here, all of this additional material and additional takes on this only underscores what an amazing night. What an amazing performance. What an amazing afternoon and evening. I mean, as you get further into this and you look at the alternate takes, you look at the additional performances, it makes the single LP initial release look kind of anemic. I love this. I think, and they really did a great job with the sound. It just, everything about it is great. So great choice there.
Excellent.
This is a fairly recent arrival, and I have played the hell out of it. I can't guarantee it's going to have the staying power, but I'm a big fan of this guy, so I think it will. This is, again, sorry about the reflection here. This is Dusko Goykovich, who is a Serbian trumpet player.
Huh.
He has a really rare, but I think probably his best known record called Swinging Macedonia. And that record was done with Dr. Nathan Davis on saxophone. And what he did there is he took a bunch of kind of Balkan folk melodies and turned them into amazing jazz. Just absolutely wonderful. I believe it was reissued on Enja. On CD and digital, where you can find it. Original copies of the LP you have to mortgage your house, one of those, kind of deals.
Right. Never seen that. Never heard of it. I know him. Can we see the back of it?
Yeah.
And what label is that? So
this is on Sdban, Sdban.
Wow.
Which is, and these are a bunch of Belgian radio recordings from 1967, including a couple of the tunes that wound up on Swinging Macedonia, Fisherman's Daughter, Bee's Waltz, which also appeared on a couple of Nathan Davis recordings. And Jimmy Woody is on this. Scott Bradford is on this. So, a couple of names that may be familiar, but he's a fiery, tremendous player. Sound on this is phenomenal. If you're a fan, definitely worth a look. This one you're going to know. And I just happen to be a huge fan of this record, and my copy was pretty beat up, so I'm really happy that I was able to upgrade to Verve's reissue of Stan Getz's Sweet Rain. For me, this is the Stan Getz record. I love this one more than any of his other records. I just think it's the bee's knees.
Is that the one with the really outstanding lineup?
Well, if
Like
you know,
Chick Corea and those guys?
if you consider Ron Carter, Grady Tate, and Chick Corea outstanding, which I do, then that is indeed where it's at.
Why is that such a special album for you, for Stan Getz?
I think because it not only is he far away from all the things that made Getz famous in terms of bossa nova. I also like that the younger push from Chick Corea, especially, for Getz to kind of get out of his comfort zone. And you hear it actually. He actually squeaks. I mean, we're talking about the sound. Stan Getz, who has the sweetest tone there is, when he's actually being pushed into zones that are not exactly familiar territory to him, that he gets even a little off balance enough.
Wow.
That he loses himself for a second. You know that he is being pushed, and I like that. He was not a guy, a lot of stories about Stan Getz and his personality, etc. Yeah. And I don't know if there's a reason to go into that. I never knew the man. I'm taking it you didn't ever know the guy, and let's not talk outside of school. But if those stories are true, and you hear that during a session, his own musicians were kind of giving him a shove to get a little uncomfortable. That I get curious about stuff like that. So I'm just kind of fascinated. No, I have not heard another Stan Getz record that sounds like Sweet Rain. If there is, I'd love to hear more about it. So I don't know, maybe someone will leave a comment or something and saying, hey, Syd, you should listen to this record or that record.
Captain Marvel is really great. Also Chick Corea.
Yes.
But the sound is god awful. And I think they may have remastered it, but it sounds miserable. But what an incredible performance. And there's that Tony Williams drum solo clip floating around the internet that is just unbelievable.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Great segue into this next record, which I'm guessing is also going to fall into your never heard of it before. You familiar with Dr. Tree?
Got me, man.
So Dr.
Strikes,
Tree,
I'm out.
So Dr. Tree was New Zealand's answer to Return to Forever, since you're mentioning Captain Marvel and Stan Getz, which is kind of like the best Return to Forever record that Return to Forever never made.
Right.
So this was a super obscure independent pressing in New Zealand. I think they made like 600 copies. And this year, the Wallen Bink label, if you're familiar with Wallen Bink, they did... not last year, but I believe the year before, they made some of my favorite records, reissuing a bunch of ORTF radio sessions with Joe Henderson, Slide Hampton, Art Farmer, phenomenal, and great sounding stuff. And they licensed it, reissued it, and it's now a double LP. They included an entire second LP of unreleased material and outtakes. Phenomenal sound.
The playing, the back?
Yeah.
And what year was this recorded?
So this was initially 75? 76.
Huh. Can you open it up?
Yeah. And, it certainly has all of the trappings of 1976.
Cool.
Wow. Shiny silk shirts, long hair. All of that. I didn't bring it with me. There's, if you look at the website, there's all the tape boxes that, show you the master reels and all, but they cover Vulcan Worlds, Stanley Clarke. The outtakes and disc 2, they cover Tony Williams' Wildlife. And it's got all the, electric piano, ripping guitar solos. If you're into records like, I don't know if you know that Mingo Lewis record that was on Epic, I believe, from 76. The percussionist from Return to Forever did that one.
Sure.
solo record that's, fairly obscure.
Right.
I would say it's not quite as a million notes a minute all the time
Mhm.
as Return of Forever. There's a little more jazz in the jazz rock here, but this is really. I expected it to be great because Wallen Bink does great work, but I wasn't expecting it to be as great as it was. And I come from the prog fusion world, and this really knockout record. This next one is a combination. It's a favorite, but this is a longtime favorite. So this is a little more of a public service announcement. I'm going to show you my original pressing first because the reissue doesn't have a feature of the original pressing, and it's a cool feature. This record, Roland Kirk's Rip Riggin' Panic.
Yeah, it's a very popular one. Yeah.
Yeah, and the original has kind of cool.
That's the original?
Cool. That's the original. It's
wow.
Cool pop-up.
Crazy.
Yeah. So it's one of these things where it's like the pop-up is in good shape, the vinyl's in good shape, and I just do not know what the hell Bowser, who wrote his name on the front cover, I guess this used to be owned by the Sha Na Na guy, what he was thinking. However, in the good news department, and this was recently within the last month or so released, Elemental Music, Spanish label, have reissued Rip Riggin' Panic, so you no longer need to pay an arm and a leg for a decent quality vinyl copy.
Wow.
It sounds really impressively good. The original sounds a little better.
Okay, that's interesting.
A little better.
Acknowledge that. I think in general, originals always sound better. That's just me.
But the $30 reissue versus I think originals for this are now going in the couple of $100 or more territory.
Does that have a pop-up in it?
No.
That had to be crazy to do if they duplicated that.
Yeah, they did include a really nice booklet with some additional liner notes. So there's additional value here. I give Elemental credit. Those guys work pretty hard, and I do like the work that they do.
Yeah, they do great work. Yeah.
So I would just say I think this is one of those records where it doesn't quite have the penetration in the marketplace, largely because it's been so hard to source. So I would be stoked to see this on more shelves. Even
I know we carry the Jazz Record Center. We carry all those Woody Shaw Elemental records, but I don't think he has that. I'm going to look when I go in tonight to close another $1 million auction.
Okay,
cool.
Millions of dollars. This one's a tone poet, but it's one that for some reason a lot of people kind of either overlooked it or snoozed on it or decided it's too modern a record, I'm going to ignore it, and that is this Joe Lovano trio Fascination. So I have a particular affinity for this record. I'm just personally very fond of it.
Why?
So. First of all, it came along at a time in my life where I had had an opportunity to meet Mr. Lovano, a couple of years prior. He had done this record a few years earlier called Celebrating Sinatra. And I was still, I forget exactly where I was working at the time, but I received an invitation to attend a listening party for it at his loft. He had this terrific loft in Soho. Wow. And he played, he brought out, a couple of saxophones, did just a couple of impromptu performances in his living room. His wife sang. She's got a tremendous voice. But when we first got to the apartment, he had this, Joe Lovano had this ridiculous record collection. It just took up just this huge amount of shelving. And
what year was that, more or less?
I want to say 96, 97, 98, in or around that area. And I'm one of those guys who never knows what to say at parties. So, of course, I wandered off and went to go look at the record collection. And I'm standing at the record collection, and I kind of feel, I'm not touching anything. Of course, I know better. But I kind of feel a presence beside me, and I look, and it's Joe Lovano, and he's like, nice, right? And we kind of start talking, and we got into conversations about two records that day. One of which was Bill Bruford's One of a Kind, because we were talking about Alan Holdsworth as a guitar player and how much we admired the guitar playing of Alan Holdsworth. And
Lovano's a fan of that record.
He didn't know that record as specifically as the Holdsworth thing was interesting, because we got into this conversation about, we agreed that Alan Holdsworth was a frustrated saxophone player in a guitar player's body, that his entire approach to the instrument was much more like that of a saxophone player than a guitar player. And that he kind of almost took a sheets of sound approach to guitar playing, that had a very Coltrane thing. And that led us to a conversation about Coltrane, because I was really struggling with trying to understand Coltrane's A Love Supreme. It wasn't that I didn't like it, I just didn't get it. And Love Supreme, which 60th anniversary today, happy anniversary, really? Love Supreme, 60th anniversary of the session today.
Wow.
And we were talking about it, and I was, describing to him that I was really having a hard time kind of understanding it, just really getting my head around the whole thing. And his recommendation was to get a CD of A Love Supreme and to start with track 2. He said, if you start there, you may have an easy, and then go back to track 1. You may have an easier time digesting it. And he was right. And he said, you'll never get to the bottom of it. It's too deep. That's a phrase that always kind of stuck with me. But my memory is just that, look, who was I? I was some, low-level kind of, record label or sales guy.
But you were writing great stuff back then. Your press releases were always great. I remember we talked about this before, when I first started this, was it this group? No, the Jazz Vinyl Lovers group. You would post these wonderful, informative, educational posts. So don't do what I do and discount your value, sir.
No, thank you. But I appreciate that. That's really kind. But he was really so generous with his time and his explanation. I never forgot that. So when this Trio Fascination record, came out, and I got it. And again, like the, Rollins record, it's a trio. There's no piano here. So you get a lot of space, for Dave Holland, for Elvin Jones to kind of work out with Lovano. And it's a beautiful sounding record. First of all, it is. There's a great use of space, a great use of the room. I also think it sounds a lot better than the original CD or the digital. I don't know why that is. Call it the placebo effect, call it, wishful thinking that I enjoy my turntable.
Someone did a good transfer, I guess.
Or the transfer, but it really sounds tremendous.
What compositions did they cover on there?
So you've got, what do we got here? 4 on the Floor, Days of Yore, Sanctuary Park, Eternal Joy. It's all Lovano originals. Ghost of a Chance, I think, is, the only non-Lovano track here. And they're all fairly tight. There's no, there's not a lot of, nothing breaks the 10-minute barrier. Which a lot of things actually.
What an amazing lineup.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've heard, I'm sure they've recorded, but I don't know any other Dave Holland, Elvin Jones pairings. That's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, and Lovano mixes it up, because he's on tenor, he's on soprano, he does clarinet here and there. He really demonstrates his versatility.
Single record? Double record?
Double. So, hey, since we're talking about records and record store, how about we talk about a record store day record that a lot of people seem to be talking about at the moment, which is this bad boy right here. Did you guys?
Pay for that? Yes, sir.
You did? Yeah. What'd you think?
It's great. I also recently picked up that other one of his, where it's the group in the studio.
Oh, the Danish record? The Danish.
I like that even better.
Yeah, I like that one better too, but I do really like this one.
Yeah, I'm just starting to listen to that, but I know that's at the store, all his records are gone all the time. But he was so great. But let's hear your take on that one. The Jazz Party, is that the title?
So yeah, this one is Jazz Party. It's interesting because you look at the Danish radio. What's that one called that came out reissued last year? Because that was also on Sam Records, if I recall correctly. Sahib Shihab with the Danish radio studio group, or with the Danish Orchestra.
Is that the cover we're talking about?
I think so. Yeah.
Previous record. Yeah, it's on some weird label, Octave or something. But yeah.
Yeah. So, that one is in a kind of controlled studio environment. It's a great record, beautiful performance, really nice arrangements. This one is a lot looser. It's a live recording, 63 also, a little earlier. First of all, it's, N-Hop on bass, any day. I mean, I'd listen to that guy play a bass solo with a phone book and I'd be happy. Right. He's just got such tremendous feel. The magic here, Conversations parts 1 through 3, which, they've got on side B of the first LP here. Really, really interesting, collection of tunes there. Or a tune broken into 3, a suite, I guess. And it is exactly as it's titled, Conversations. You kind of have to really sit yourself down in front of it and listen, and you'll know exactly what they mean. It's conversations, and everyone is a good speaker and everyone is a good listener. And in a live context, that isn't always the case. People get a little excited, things start to get sped up, people get a little too intense or a little emotional. This proceeds at a really excellent pace, and it's so nicely recorded that you can kind of, you hear someone start to get a little exuberant, then you hear them pull back a little bit, and you hear someone else kind of, hey, relax. He was not serious when he said that thing, it's at that level.
Who are some of the other players of note on there? Who's the drummer?
So that's Alex Riel,
right.
Who, lots of dates with Dexter Gordon on Steeplechase and others, kind of a go-to since this was in Denmark at Montreux Jazz House. When was this recorded? October 1963, so before my time. Yes.
Can you open the gatefold and show that?
I certainly can.
Snare drums.
Yes.
Right. Big picture of Ben Webster there. I wonder why they have a photo of Ben Webster.
I am guessing.
They go into that in the liner notes.
Yeah. I do not know.
That's cool.
Yeah, but it is a
great choice. Another great selection.
Yeah, really terrific sounds there. This is not going to be for everyone. This is going to be for your viewers who are absolutely the fusion heads, those who dig the fusion. But I don't know if you got this one in your shop. The Mahavishnu Orchestra live at the Berkeley Community Theater, 1972.
What label is that?
So this is on this is Renaissance Records.
Huh. I don't think we did. We've had some of those hi-hat things.
So this is apparently legit. It's Renaissance Records. Here's the back.
Nice.
Here is the inside. Sorry about the glare. I'll send you JPEGs of all this so it's better. And wow. They even went the extra mile to do some nice sleeve inserts of
cool.
Of everybody. This
nice.
Is a triple LP.
Is it from a radio show? How's the sound quality?
So this was originally from a radio show that was circulating, and the first gen tape, which had leaked some years ago, originally got a workover from Henry Kaiser, wow. San Francisco-based guitar player.
Right.
Also a big fan, and he took a run at, and again, this is from, the amateur tape trading community. He took a run at mastering it and kind of, it found its way back out into the community. And then, of course, all the amateur armchair audio engineers took additional shots at remastering it, which largely involved putting on so much no noise that it sounded horrible. And after they no noised it to death, it kind of sank into further obscurity. While not a completely perfect audiophile delight, and part of that is just that when the Mahavishnu Orchestra were firing on all cylinders, they were the cause of more blown speakers probably in 1972 than Black Sabbath. These guys were loud.
Is this the what are the tunes? Is it Birds of Fire-ish or Inner Mounting Flames-ish or
You've got Birds of Fire, Miles Beyond, You Know. There's a version of Dream that clocks in at 23 minutes, a 19-minute version of One Word, a 20-minute version of Dance of Maya, Sanctuary, Lotus on Irish Stream, and Vital Transformation.
Wow.
Make sure your sofa has seatbelts and yeah, I mean, this is not for the faint of heart. This will peel wallpaper at like 300 yards.
When I was a kid, man, we'd put Birds of Fire on 45 and smoke dope in a big circle and just sit back. And it was just, it was insane. Even on 33, it was insane.
I mean, this is, I have to say, this is not one that's necessarily going to pass the spousal acceptancy factor. This is an intense, occasionally abrasive listen. But the playing is just the back and forth between Billy Cobham and John McLaughlin. When they get into those little musical kerfuffles, it's just so amazing to listen to. The speed at which they can react to one another and turn on a dime is just incredibly impressive. Pull this one out also, another tone poet. Again, young Chick Corea here, joining Bobby Hutcherson. Sometimes when you have a record that you've got both piano and vibes because they operate in that same kind of tonal space, that can sometimes sound a little cluttered. Not an issue here. This is one of the best tone poets of the year. Not only does this record sound great, the tunes are great. Harold Land for the win. Anything he and Bobby Hutcherson did together, as far as I'm concerned, mandatory in a jazz library.
Yeah.
They also did, what did they do this year? Was it Medina, I think? And it's, it has a sister record, Spiral. They were both, jammed onto one CD, but, they're finally getting their just desserts in the tone poet category. But, Joe Chambers on drums, can't go wrong with him, and, paired up with Hutcherson. This record really sounds terrific. I had a mid-70s Liberty pressing of this, and I did A-B it. And the tone poet handily beat that one. Now, I don't know if an original Total Eclipse might go the other direction.
What year is that record, the recording?
This recording was originally 68.
Okay.
And this one was done at Plaza Sound.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Huh. So I kind of have my questions as to whether or not an original would actually be better than the the tone poet.
Yeah, it can be either or, hit and miss. It's a case by case thing usually.
Lovely color photos on the inside.
Nice. Wow. Yeah.
And it's got like a nice mixture of some kind of easier to groove to modal stuff, some naughtier modal stuff, and then some stuff that really flirts with the inside-outside that Joe Chambers tended to bring to the table whenever he was playing with Hutcherson. And all of those 68, 69, 70 performances with Bobby Hutcherson and Harold Land, all essential. They were touring at the time. They did a whole bunch of gigs at the Antibes Jazz Festival, etc. All those things were broadcast on the radio. If you can find tapes of any of those things, find them. They are superb. This was a reissue this year on Contemporary as part of they've been celebrating their 70th anniversary, I think, for about 70 years now. It's about to be the 80th anniversary of the 70th anniversary, and I'm only teasing them because I think they're doing a really nice job. They are, yeah. Sometimes labels are like, you made fun of me in your Instagram, and I'm like, the day I stop making fun of you is the day you should probably worry about how I'm feeling about what you're doing. Right. As far as I'm concerned, every note that was played at the Black Hawk has got to be in your library. This group was so good. Are
they going to do the other three? I assume they are.
I got to imagine that they're coming. Right. Each of the volumes has at least one A+. You got to hear performance. This one is famous for its take on Summertime. Which is really good. But volume 4 has this. It opens with a tune called Kabu, which is just a knockout. I believe it's volume 3 that has Whisper Not. Volume 2 has Step Lightly, which are both the standout performances from both of those. It would make a superb box. There was also a volume 5 on CD only that had a bunch
wow, I
of
didn't know
performances
that. Really?
that never made, the vinyl because there was a lot
Wow.
more. But even when you listen to the outtakes and go, well, okay, that version of Whisper Not, maybe that's an A. If the other one was an A plus, it's still an A. This group was just it was so great. Victor Feldman, I mean, wow, what a pianist. And, Joe Gordon on trumpet. I mean, troubled life, but amazing musician. And so I thought they did a really good job with the sound restoration here. Again, I have an original mono. This is a stereo. I don't think it's a necessarily fair comparison with the mono to stereo. I thought the stereo sounded great on the reissue.
All those contemporaries sound great in almost any pressing you can get a hold of.
Yeah.
And there's that period where it's hard to tell when it's from because the label looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
But all those Roy Danan records are fabulous. I don't know if he was the engineer on that.
I believe he was. No, that's Howard Holzer.
Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But all those records tend to sound great. Good choice. Yeah. Another good choice.
And with this one, and I think something you said before is kind of it resonates with me, and I think it's this notion of when the original sounds better than the reissue. I think there is a portion of the electorate for whom that is going to be the deciding factor in how they approach making their purchase. And I think there is for the some of the younger folk that I'm finding are reading my Substack or Instagram and message me occasionally with questions about this or that. What they're weighing is they may have just invested in their first real turntable. They maybe got into it. Someone gave them a Crossley for Christmas one year, and the next year they're buying a U-turn or something a little nicer.
A real turntable. Yeah.
And their struggle is, boy, I know that the original pressing probably sounds better, but it's either spend $150 on the original or $30 on the reissue, and then have
I get that. Yeah. I get that, and I've said before. I think all those early '70s tone poets of early '70s Blue Notes are all better. Like Schizophrenia, I have the original, sounded horrible because Rudy's experimenting so much. And I get people can't spend that kind of crazy money. And really, you can't even find those records anymore. You can't even find Liberties. I paid the store. I paid $100 for a Liberty the other day. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But part of it also is, and Chad Kasmas pointed out to me, I have a TD-124 and tube amps and horn speakers, which is what that music was made on. That's what it was recorded on. So it kind of makes sense. It would sound great on that. I mean, I have people all the time, and I play them, not all the time, but often, and I'll play them an original, a tone poet, and it's very obvious. Part of it's my system. I mean, I'm a reviewer. I have a crazy, stupid system, but I also believe you can hear that on almost any system. And there's also the whole thing that your brain also sort of fills in the things that are missing. So there's a lot going on there. But the most important thing is that people hear this music, whatever vinyl format it is. So, and I'll leave it there.
No, listen, I think that there's, I appreciate kind of an open-minded approach to this because I think there isn't necessarily one, specific right answer about, any of this. And I think the good news is, and again, I gotta, thank you for your participation in this, that there are people coming into the hobby. There are new people coming into vinyl, coming into jazz, coming into turntables and audiophilia in kind of new and different ways. And not gatekeeping is a really important part of, all that you're doing, all that what I'm doing, what our entire community of, YouTube and Instagram and Substack and Blue Sky and insert social media platform of choice here, are doing, which is not telling them what they're doing wrong, but encouraging them all the different ways in which they can do it right.
Yeah, I know jazz is a very daunting thing to get into, and we have a lot of newbies in the Jazz Vinyl Lovers group. I do personally, I have some thoughts on the mastering decisions. They always say, and they show you, it's just from the tape to the locker. No, there's a bunch of gear in between there. It's called mastering equipment or remastering. So decisions are being made, and the tone poets have a certain sound that come from the decisions they made. And to me, all the tone poets sound exactly the same in a very good, they're homogeneous in the way they're very rich and very lush. And so they'll sound good on the great majority of systems, which were the same decisions Rudy was making for his period. So when I make different decisions, I might, but hey, you can't fool with Joe Hardy's expertise or experience. So
Okay, so this is Nana. I'm actually show you a copy of the vinyl from this group, and then I'm going to show you the record in question, just so we can kind of maybe stick with the vinyl theme. This is a very obscure group out of Japan. This is a record from 1982 that they did. The band is called Kenso. This is their second album, and this is on the what label is this? Pam Records. These guys are so obscure and small that when I picked this record up secondhand some years ago, they had handwritten their address and taped it to the insert.
And the artist is called Kenso?
Kenso, and Kenso is led by this gentleman here on guitar. His day job, he's a dentist, and he performs in his white lab, dental coat on the rare occasions that he does. And the reason that I'm showing this to you, Kenso's been around since 1973 or 1974. Maybe earlier, in the 50 odd years they've been together, I think they've only made 8 or 9 records. They record very sporadically. They all have day jobs. They record very sporadically. So they started off as a prog rock, kind of a symphonic prog rock band with jazz fusion influences. And over time, the prog rock element has kind of been pushed to the background, and a more experimental jazz fusion thing has become a lot more apparent. That includes everything from kind of Andalusian and flamenco jazzy flair to kind of more John Zorn experimental stuff creeping in. And much to my surprise, out of nowhere, 2 weeks ago, they dropped a brand new CD.
Now, how did you find that? How did that come into your presence?
There was a time before the internet. In that time before the internet, if you were a prog rocker, you knew the big record, the big bands. You knew your Yes and your Genesis, King Crimson, ELP, etc. And if you got super into prog rock, you started to hear, maybe if you had some friends who were plugged in, about a generation of bands that came in kind of just after them, and it was Camel and Caravan and Nectar and kind of some more obscure. And then when the internet happened, and all of a sudden you got connected with a global community of prog fans, and you started to hear that the Yes fans in Italy were really into all these other bands like PFM and New Trolls and blah, blah, blah. And then they had their list of kind of semi-obscure bands underneath that. And the same thing in Germany, and the same thing in Norway, and the same, et cetera, et cetera. And then much like discovering Japanese jazz had this incredibly rich, fertile scene, Japanese prog and fusion also had this. And the vinyl is, talk about obscure and collectible. I have no idea what this Kenso record goes for, but they only put a couple of them out on vinyl. Really obscure, really expensive. And I have not stopped playing this record since it walked in the door.
What's
here.
The title of that?
So this is called An Old Warrior Shook the Sun. And like all Kenso records, it starts off lulling you into a false sense of fromage. You listen to what sounds like a Japan, city pop, fat-toned guitar, over some almost too slick, 90s kind of production. And suddenly, a couple of minutes in, you're listening to this unbelievable, complex, where the hell did this come from, Weather Report type, Zywinal-esque keyboard thing, and there's 2 keyboard players going at it while the guitar player's going absolutely berserk, that then takes a left turn into an experimental, kind of almost Naked City-esque kind of thing that then resolves into a almost space jazz, kind of a gong, mid-70s gong when they were in their jazz fusion phase. That has kind of the big floating space organ with the fusiony guitar, wailing over it. And then a couple of songs later, it's a wordless flamenco singer over a 12/8 backbeat that you can kind of barely follow as the guitar is doing if Wes Montgomery were Zakk Wylde.
Wow.
This is a crazy record.
Where would you find that CD, you think?
It's at Amazon, you can digital download, etc. I'm guessing at some point they'll probably do vinyl. But bonus record.
I saw this somewhere. Where did you get that?
I believe this one came from Dusty Groove.
What a beautiful cover.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, I love it.
Gorgeous, right? Astigmatic, is kind of the studio record which came out on Warner Music Poland. Komita, who for those who were like, who the hell is that guy? A lot more of you know him than you may think. Rosemary's Baby was the big soundtrack that kind of put his name on the map. But he did this record, Astigmatic. Am I pronouncing that right? I think it's Astigmatic. I forget. I don't have a copy of it here with me.
Can you show us the back of that?
In the main house, yeah. With Tomas Stanko on trumpet. So I would say this is it's largely modal, but leaning weird. Definitely flirting a lot with Inside Out. If you're into Jackie McLean's One Step Beyond, you're probably going to really dig this record, although it's actually more exploratory in places than that, largely because the tunes are just so damn long. Side B is one song. Side A is basically two songs. The sound is pristine. This is beautifully recorded. This is from it's from a festival I can't pronounce. Comes with a nice insert. Liner notes. And there's no shortage of kind of archival live material from Komita. Some of it's a little, questionable in quality. And this actually predates the recording of Astigmatic.
What didn't he do the soundtrack for some Roman Polanski movie?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I know he did one.
Good boy. I feel like
doesn't matter. But a great iconic musician. I remember they reissued a bunch of his stuff on CD, I guess in the 90s.
Yeah.
Right. That's when I became familiar with that stuff. Well, man, that's great. What an amazing list. You've topped yourself from last year. Wow. I didn't know even half of that stuff. I mean, I knew the obvious Blue Dun things, but what an exceptional list. Thank you so much, Syd. That was fabulous.
Thank you. We are lucky. We are lucky in that we get to do this. We are lucky in that there are many people, artist teams, artist management teams, label teams that are working incredibly hard, to put these things together. A moment and a hat tip to all of them. Having sat on the label side as long as I did, I know what it takes to make this happen, and it's a lot. And I would only ask that I see a lot of feedback, and I think some of it is incredibly thoughtful, and about half of it is respectful.
Why is that, you think?
You know what? I think like any number of institutions that deserve to be taken down to the carpet. And whether that's your cable company, your cellular company, insurance companies seem to be a favorite target these days. It's easy to get angry with an institution when you feel like a job has not been properly done, or the proper respect hasn't been paid to a reissue, or corners have been cut. or
Right.
in some way, for sure, shape or form, things haven't been done to your satisfaction. And I think presenting why things have fallen short, I think is completely legitimate. I think in order for those pieces of feedback to really land in a way where they're going to have a meaningful impact, when it starts off with "those idiots at the record company" is the first part of the sentence.
Wow.
That's what I mean by it's not always as respectful as perhaps it should be. And I'm not saying there aren't idiots at the record companies. There are plenty of idiots at the record companies, but I will say a lot of the folks that are behind a lot of what I've discussed today with you are not idiots. They are deep music fans who work really hard to bring these things to life, and they're often the ones who are reading the comments.
But I think in general, I mean, all the U.S. labels, Kraft, Blue Note, they're all doing incredible work.
Yes.
And because I remember back, as I'm sure you do, back in the 90s, you only would get these kind of things from Japan, where the compilations and reissues were so incredibly beautifully done. And then that kind of stepped up back when you were at Sony. They were doing all those beautiful boxes on CD, which I still have all of those. Those were amazing. I don't know why Sony has dropped the ball as far as reissuing vinyl. They really have in general. But now everybody is just firing on all cylinders in the U.S. I think people who complain, I'm not sure what they're complaining about. This is riches, and we're in a vinyl golden age, as I've said a million times. So, well, thank you so much, Syd. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Happy holidays, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thanks again, sir.
All right.
Bye.